Welcome to 3 Point Lead. My name is Max Loeb, Loeb's Leads. This is a Loeb's Leads podcast, and today we're going to be talking about the AFC North. It's the best division in football. I don't think it's a stretch to say that, but I also don't think it's a stretch to say that every single team in this division finishes above 500. It almost happened last year with all of the injuries to the Bengals, all of the injuries to the Browns. Obviously, the Steelers, the Browns, and the Ravens did finish above 500, but I think it happens this year. We're going to go through every team schedule, and we're also going to go through about halfway through the video or the podcast the award predictions: the offensive player of the year, the defensive player of the year, the rookie of the year, my sleeper, and my breakout player for the AFC North specifically. Before we talk about any of the teams, though, if you are new, make sure you subscribe below. If you're watching on YouTube, like the video as well. Leave a comment for any 2 cents you have on the AFC North. And if you're listening on Spotify, Amazon Podcasts, whatever audio platform you use, make sure you're following so the next episode pops up next time you go onto the app. This is episode 3 of 8. You don't want to miss the others. The South episodes are out already, AFC and NFC South. Without further ado, though, let's talk about the Baltimore Ravens. Now, key acquisition, Derrick Henry. Key departure, Patrick Queen. One side of the ball got exponentially better. I think the other side of the ball, maybe not exponentially worse, but got worse. And I think you look at this team, everything they stand for offensively, it's going to change going into this year, even with Todd Monken staying there, right? It was a more balanced attack last year. They used Lamar's legs, but they didn't have a workhorse like Derrick Henry in the backfield. So I look at this team now as a team that's more formidable on the ground. I think they're going to be able to run on teams. The pass attack is still going to be there. Schematically, when you have such a good run game with Lamar and Derrick Henry, you're going to be able to do some really good things through the air. But I think they're going to run the ball a lot more. I like Derrick Henry a lot this year. We'll talk about some other players we like halfway through the video, but love Derrick Henry. Love this ground game. Defensively, you lose a guy like Pat Queen. You lose your defensive coordinator. You wonder how good this team is going to be on defense. I think they're still a very good unit. Can they replicate what they did last year? I don't know. I'm not convinced. But let's walk through their schedule. Week 1, they travel to Kansas City. Obviously, it's the opener. I have them losing to the Chiefs, but off a mini bye next week, I have them beating the Las Vegas Raiders. Week 3, traveling to Dallas, I have them beating the Cowboys. Week 4, hosting the Bills, I have them beating the Bills. Week 5, traveling to Cincy, I have the Bengals winning that game. Week 6, hosting Washington, I have the Ravens. Week 7, if you guys missed the South episode, I think the Buccaneers match up really well against Baltimore. I think the Bucs take that game. Week 8, traveling to Cleveland, the Browns take it at home. Week 9, Week 10, Ravens win both of those games, hosting the Broncos and the Bengals. Week 11, even off of a mini bye after that Bengals game, I have them losing to Pittsburgh, traveling to Pittsburgh and losing to Pittsburgh. Monday Night Football, Chargers played them really, really tough last year, guys. I think the Chargers win this game. I think the Harbaugh system comes into effect the second half of the year, but then it's all Ravens after that. Backs against the wall, trying to win the division. Week 13, hosting Philly. Baltimore, they get their Week 14 bye. Week 15, off a bye at New York. They beat the Giants. Week 16, hosting the Steelers. They beat the Steelers. Week 17, traveling to Houston in a huge game for seeding. The Ravens win that game. In Week 18, hosting the Browns, probably to clinch the division for both of those teams. I have the Baltimore Ravens winning that game. So 11-6. I won't tell you who finishes first in the division until we go through every schedule, but 8-0 at home, 3-6 on the road, 7-4 versus winning teams, 4-2 versus losing teams, and 6-3 versus playoff teams from the year prior. Playing 9 of the 13, I guess, because the Ravens were a playoff team. 13 playoff teams from the year before is kind of wild, but that's how the Ravens schedule goes. It's a tough schedule. They're a really good team, though. I trust them to get the job done there. Now, 3-3 in the division, huge tiebreaker. Conference tiebreaker is what comes next. I want everybody to remember that. So they're 7-5 in the conference. We will move to the next team in the AFC North, and that is the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, again, the Steelers, Tomlin, 9-8 thing, I'm not going to say it's real because I just think that's how it goes. Sometimes they're slightly above average in a lot of aspects. I think their defense got way better. I think their offense got way better. Their schedule's tough, guys. Their schedule's really tough, and there's no way to slice it. Week 1, going to Atlanta, I think they lose that game. Week 2, traveling to Denver, I trust them to beat the Broncos. Trust them to beat the Chargers early on in the season as well. So they're 2-1. Week 4, traveling to Indy, I have Indy winning that game. Week 5, hosting Dallas. Off of Dallas's mini-bye, I actually have the Steelers winning that game. I think that's going to be a tough game. I think Pittsburgh wins that one. But Week 6, traveling to Vegas, that's Vegas's game. Week 7, beating teams that they shouldn't. The Jets, you're going to notice a theme here. Beat teams you shouldn't. They beat the Jets at home. Week 7. Week 8, hosting the Giants on Monday Night Football, they beat the Giants. So they walk into their bye week in Week 9 at 5-3. 5-3, and they play Washington the week after that. They beat Washington 6-3. They beat Baltimore the next week, 7-3. But guys, this Steelers schedule as the year goes on is a gauntlet, an absolute gauntlet. They travel to Cleveland for Thursday Night Football. They lose to Cleveland. I don't think that's a crazy thing to say. But the week after that, they get their mini bye off of Thursday Night Football, right? They have to travel to Cincy to get the Bengals off of their full bye. So the mini bye advantage is out of the window. The Bengals win that game. Host Cleveland week 14. I think they probably split with the Browns. So they win that game week 14. Then week 15, travel to Philly. You're not going to win that game. Week 16, travel to Baltimore. You're not going to win that game. Week 17, host the Chiefs. You're not going to win that game. So all of a sudden, as great as you start the year, you are now 8-8 at week 18. 8-8 at week 18. You host the Bengals. I do have them beating the Bengals week 18, but finishing at 9-8, 3-3 in the division, 6-6 in the conference, 7-1 at home, but 2-7 on the road. They have some tough games on the road. Indy, Atlanta, obviously the divisional teams, Baltimore, Philly. It's going to be tough to win games on the road. Play 11 teams that made the playoffs last year. 11 games against teams that made the playoffs last year. That's a lot. That's a tough schedule, especially as the year goes on. It is a really tough go for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I have them finishing at 9-8. Could very well go to 10-7, right? You could very well have them beating a team like the Colts, but at the same time, I have them beating teams like Dallas, who I think is a better team than Pittsburgh. Jets, I think, is a better team than Pittsburgh. I think either way, they're just above 500, and maybe if their defense plays consistently great, especially in the secondary, they can consistently compete with teams like the Cleveland Browns, the Cincinnati Bengals, the Baltimore Ravens. But right now, 11-6, 9-8, competing with those 11-6 teams. As we move to the Cleveland Browns next, we will talk about their record, which, spoiler, winds up being 11-6. Before we talk about the Cleveland Browns, though, I am going to give you my award predictions. We'll pause for a brief second and a brief message from our sponsor before we do so. But let's talk award predictions. Now, if you guys want to act on any of the projections of the players I talked about, you can do so on Better Picks. You can join with code LEADS, LEADS. They will match your first deposit up to $250. It is the best way to play fantasy sports, picking more or less on your favorite players. Without further ado, though, let's get into our award predictions. We will start with our Rookie of the Year, and it's one that not a lot of people are going to talk about. I know I just said some moderately bad things about the Steelers. I think Roman Wilson is a rookie I have my eyes on. I think he's going to be the spearhead of the offense. A lot of motion, a lot of jet sweeps, a lot of short underneath passes, screen passes. I think when you look at an Arthur Smith offense, you got to have that spearhead in the slot, right? Doesn't always get the ball, but he's very important to that offense. He's going to make a lot of noise in that sense. To be honest with you, he's their number 2 receiver. I think Roman Wilson has a very clear impact, whether it shows up on the stat sheet or not. I think Roman Wilson has a crazy impact. That's the rookie I am looking at most within this division. Now, I know Jermaine Burton's a hot topic. Everybody likes to talk about him. I think that third receiver role, filling Tyler Boyd's shoes, Joe Burrow talked about it's going to be a by committee thing. Obviously, you got Trent Irwin. Obviously, you got Andre Yoshivas. Like, there are a lot of receivers that can step in and fill that. So I find it hard to believe Jermaine Burton's going to do it all by himself. Roman Wilson, though, could add a little more prominent of a role in Pittsburgh than a guy like Burton would in Cincinnati, even if Cincinnati's going to throw the ball more. Now, I do think Cincinnati has a lot of really good players, and this is where I go with my sleeper. Somehow, some way, we have forgotten about T. Higgins. To me, that is a true number 1 in the NFL still. He battled injuries last year. He's a very talented player. Somehow, some way, we have forgotten about T. Higgins. He is my sleeper of, honestly, the entire NFL, the entire AFC. But the AFC North, T. Higgins is my big sleeper. He is a 6'4" monster, matchup nightmare. We have forgotten how good he is. My breakout player, and it's really tough because there are so many breakout players, quote unquote, in this division, but one guy I really do have my eyes on is David Njoku. I think in an offense now that fully understands his skill set, fully understands the best ways to get on the ball, as we saw with Joe Flacco last year, this team is going to air the football out even more than it has. I think Jerry Jeudy could be a big beneficiary too. Amari Cooper will get his, but David Njoku, I think, is going to have a very unique role in this Browns offense. I think he could have 1,000+ yards. He is going to have a crazy year in Cleveland. Defensive Player of the Year will stay in Cleveland. I still do think it's Myles Garrett. I think TJ Watt could have the sack numbers to argue against any player in the NFL to win Defensive Player of the Year. But you look at the impact that Myles Garrett has. You look at his pressure rate. You look at how much he affects quarterbacks, even if he's bringing them to the ground or he's not bringing them to the ground. Myles Garrett, to me, is the best defensive player in the NFL. I think he wins Defensive Player of the Year again, at least looking at this division specifically. He wins it for the AFC North. Now, Offensive Player of the Year. And this is so tough because I do think Joe Burrow is going to have a big bounce back year. I think Deshaun Watson could have a good year. I'm going Derrick Henry. I think the Ravens get back to their identity as a team that's going to ground and pound. It's going to be really hard to stop that run game with Lamar Jackson as well. I think Derrick Henry has a big year. I really don't know if he's lost a huge step. I think people just assume that because people are stacking the box and forcing Will Levis and the Tennessee Titans to beat them in other ways. I think Derrick Henry has a really good year. Even if it's 4 yards in a cloud of dust, he will put up great numbers, and Baltimore will get back to their identity at running the football. Enough of the award predictions, though. Let's talk Cleveland Browns. I, again, have them at 11-6. I think this is probably one of the best teams in the NFL on paper. We'll walk through their schedule, but week 1, hosting Dallas, I do have them winning that game. Week 2, traveling to Jacksonville. I actually have the Jaguars winning that game. Week 3, again, this is all without Nick Chubb. Keep that in mind. Week 3, hosting the Giants. I have them winning that game. Week 4, traveling to Vegas. I have Vegas winning that game. Week 5, traveling to Washington. Cleveland gets the job done. Week 6, traveling to Philly off of Philly's bye. The Browns aren't going to win that game. So here's the thing. Week 6, 3-3. The Browns fans panic. Potentially. Listen to their next games, though. I think they're going to be all right. Week 7, hosting Cincy after a loss. I trust them to get the job done. Week 8, hosting Baltimore. They can win that game. Week 9, hosting the Chargers. They should win that game. Week 10, bye. Week 11, off the bye, traveling New Orleans. They should win that game. Week 12, hosting Pittsburgh on a short week. They really should win that game. Week 13, traveling to Denver off of their mini bye. They should win that game. So you go 3-3, and all of a sudden you move to 9-3. 9-3 entering week 14. And week 14 on is really tough. AFC North teams have a tough end of the year because they play each other, but because they play tough teams outside. Week 14 traveling to Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh wins that game. Week 15 hosting the Chiefs. I do have the Browns winning, but week 16 and week 18 I have them dropping. 2 more divisional games on the road to Cincy and Baltimore. Week 17 off their mini bye. I do have them beating the Miami Dolphins and finishing 11-6, but because of the tiebreaker, guys, the Baltimore Ravens would actually be ahead of the Cleveland Browns in the standings. But you look at their records, 8-0 at home, 3-6 on the road. That's the trend that's happened with the Cleveland Browns. That's how it goes with the Cleveland Browns. Win the home games, probably lose the road games. They got some tough road matchups too. It's not to say they don't, but I do have the Baltimore Ravens taking the division. And I believe it's based off of, is it conference record, strength of schedule? I'm going to check for you right now. It looks like it's strength of schedule. Yeah. So off of strength of schedule, at least the Baltimore Ravens would be ahead of them. I do have the Ravens winning this division, but the Cincinnati Bengals slowly behind just those other 2 teams. Now, you look at Cincy, this is a team that made the Super Bowl a couple years ago. I do think they're kind of riding that high still, but Cincy's a team that can score a lot of points defensively. I go back and forth on them. I think they're middle of the pack, but can score a lot of points. And because they finished last in their division last year, do have some easier matchups compared to some of the other teams in the AFC North. Like week 1, they host the Patriots. They should win that game. I don't trust them to beat the Chiefs off of the Chiefs mini bye week 2, but week 3, host Washington. You should win that game. Week 4, you play Carolina. You should win that game. Week 5, I do have them beating the Ravens at home. Week 6, play the Giants. You should win that game. Week 7, going to Cleveland. They lose. Week 8, hosting Philly. They lose. And then week 9, hosting the Raiders. You win that game. Week 10, travel to Baltimore on Thursday. You lose that, but the next week, coming back round off your mini bye. You have the Chargers. You win that game. Bye week. Steelers. Hosting the Steelers off of your full bye. You win that game. Traveling Dallas. Dallas is mini bye. Tough. I do have Dallas winning that game. But week 15, travel to the Titans. You should win that game. Week 16, hosting the Browns. You win that game. Week 17, hosting the Broncos off your mini bye. You win that game. And then week 18, I do have the Steelers beating the Bengals. But 11-6 for Cincinnati. 7-1 at home. 4-5 on the road. Undefeated versus teams with a losing record. 8 wins versus teams with a losing record, at least from the year prior. So they have a very, very high ceiling, in my opinion. This team is going to score a lot of points. 11-6. That's 3 teams in the AFC North at 11-6. We have the Ravens at the top based off the tiebreaker, but the Browns at the 5 seed in the AFC and the Bengals at the 6 seed in the AFC as my standings break out. Now, if you want to check out the rest of the AFC standings, they are either out or will be out, depending on when you're watching this video, so you can see where the other teams are, how they stack up against the wildcard teams, and basically who they'd play in the playoffs. But I appreciate you guys watching. I appreciate you guys listening. Again, if you're new, make sure to leave a like, leave a 5-star rating, and subscribe and follow if you're not already. But I will see you guys next time for the NFC North video. God bless.